Everyone, this is our Module 6 case study. So, jumping right in to summarize our case study, Oakwood's a rural community in the Midwest known for its proud and supportive parents who actively engage in school events. The Oakwood Unified School District comprises of 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school, serving a population of 6,000 students. Recently, this district faced budget cuts that coincided with a previously approved 5% salary increase for teachers due to cost of living. To address the situation, a committee was formed to suggest budget cuts, leading to discussions about reducing transportation, after school athletics funding, and the elementary school music program. At the board meeting, parents proposed alternative solutions for the music program and athletics funding, but over 100 parents protested the topic of transportation due to the financial burden it would put on families. Due to the support of the community, Due to the support the community has for its district, a parent stood as a spokesperson and urged the district to continue providing free transportation while finding a resolution. So, jumping into identification and analysis of the case study, what has happened? All school districts are unexpectedly losing funds from the state, and this happened in the spring semester. The board in this district has already approved a 5% increase to teacher salaries due to the cost of living. A committee was formed to discuss budget cuts within the district. Recommendations from this committee are being presented to the board for discussion, and the community disagrees with the proposal of charging for transportation. When and where it occurred, Oakwood Unified School District is a rural school district in the Midwest that has 6,000 students with 2 elementary schools, 1 middle, and 1 high school. This happened during the spring semester. That's when the budget cuts were announced from the state sometime from the governor's office. Um, the governor's office is the one who put out the budget cuts. There was a committee meeting at some point in time that was held before the school board meeting. And then, of course, there is the school board meeting where we had the 100 parents protest charging for transportation, but we also had parents there who were involved in the meeting and were speaking about ways that they could support the elementary school music program as well as support the after school athletics. So, who was involved or concerned? The local board of education, the superintendent, the district office personnel that were involved in that committee meeting, teachers, parents, the PTO, students, of course, and then coaches and transportation. So, moving into our legal or ethical issues, the district is considering charging families a fee for transportation. I would want to ensure, as superintendent, that our district and the Board of Education are aware of Statute 726487, which describes who can be given a fee for transportation and who cannot. Individuals who cannot be fined are students who are counted in determining the transportation weighting of the school district under the Kansas School Equity and Enhancement Act. Students with disabilities under the provisions of special education also cannot be fined, as well as those who are eligible for free and reduced price meals. You also cannot fine a student that is entitled to transportation by living 2.5 miles or more from the regular route of a school bus from the school. It also specifies where funds collected from transportation fees can go. But in a rural district such as this, that is primarily blue collar, this may eliminate the majority of families from having to pay a fee. The district as a whole is losing funds from the state. So the district itself has been harmed by the decision that has come out of the governor's office to cut funds. The district's already promised its teachers a 5% increase due to the cost of living. So those contracts were already approved by the board. So one can only assume then that in order to run the district successfully and safely, the cost is also going to go up. And now we need to determine how to do so with less funds. And those contracts that were already approved, if we have to go back on that, those are also a binding document. And so there could be some ethical issues that come out of that, as well as potentially legal issues as well. The after school athletic programs, these can potentially be harmed by the decision to cut back funding from them, as the students who participate in these may not be able to receive a high quality program due to the lack of funding, even with parents being willing to fundraise for these events and activities. The elementary school music program, there could be a breach of contract with the elementary school teacher or teachers if they are on a contract that lasts for more than 1 year. The changes that are being discussed around the elementary school music program may impact the amount of days per week that music is being held, and thus may also reduce the amount of staff or hours needed to meet needs. There's also the potential concern of using the docents. Although they do have knowledge and skills to present information on a subject area, they are not licensed or qualified to teach standards. Most districts also have their own requirements for volunteers that come into school buildings, such as passing a background check and or a drug screening, things like that, before they're able to be present and involved with their children and our students. So, concerns with the students, are we being ethically responsible and knowing that they may have less quality access to music education and athletics? Outside of that, just the budget cut in general could impact many more areas. And then finally, transportation. If we are to have to potentially make any cuts to transportation, some employees may be without a job, and those that are remaining may experience a higher workload. And we would want to ensure that we're also following all labor laws that are required for our staff. So, in a sentence, here's the topic statement. The school district, faced with state imposed budget cuts, is implementing innovative strategies such as cost saving measures and fees to address our newfound financial shortfall, despite disagreements from parents, while attempting to balance the needs of teachers, ensure fair compensation, and respect our parent concerns. So let's look at the facts that we know about this case. The people in general, there is a positive relationship between the district and the community. We have our local Board of Education. However, we don't know how long they've been BOE members or what their backgrounds are, what are they involved in. Those types of things can be important when these types of situations come up. We have our superintendent. How long has our superintendent been in this role? This is a community that people tend to stay in. So has the superintendent always been a part of this school district, or were they somebody who was just hired in for this leadership role and is kind of new to the community? We have mention of district office personnel that are part of the committee. There's two district office personnel on the committee, but we don't know which two or what their roles are. Is it our chief financial officer? Is it a secretary to the superintendent? What are their roles and what's their knowledge and why are they a part of this committee? We have our teachers. I don't know how many teachers there are for the entire school district. Knowing that has been a promised 5% increase, depending on how many teachers there are that this has been promised to, could be a greater impact or a lesser impact. And then how many elementary school music teachers are there? Is there one that's shared between both elementary schools? Are there two teachers? What does that look like? We have our parents and PTO. Again, they're very supportive of the district. They're involved in different things. They attend events. They're solution focused. They want what's best for everyone, but they do disagree with that proposal of adding a fee for transportation. We have our students, all 6,000 of them spread between the four buildings, and I want to know how many of them are involved in athletics and how many of those students actually receive transportation from the district. We have our coaches. Again, how many of them are there? And transportation, I want to know how many people work in that department. As far as the facts and the unknowns about place, we have our Oakwood School District. I'm curious to know how many square miles does this district's boundary cover? What is the total population of the community? We know that most individuals have to travel for work and that it's rural and in the Midwest. We have the board meeting. There are a lot of parents present to discuss the budget cuts and to offer their voice and what they disagree with and help find solutions. So at the program level, we have our district. We know that it is a public school system, which can impact some of the statutes and different things that we're required to follow, how we receive funds, things like that. We have our elementary school music. I want to know how many days a week do the students attend the music class? How long are the classes? Some of those types of things. And the athletics, again, how many teams are there and how many different activities are there? How many different areas are we looking to impact by cutting funds from here? And then we know that transportation within this district has historically been free, which is a big deal for such a rural community. So, upon reviewing everything that we've already discussed, we now need to review and prioritize these things. So, what are the damages that occur for stakeholders or for the community? So, depending on what the outcome is, it could be damaging to stakeholders such as parents and students. For example, if the decision is to pay a fee for transportation, parents may opt out of receiving transportation, which in turn could cause turmoil on family schedules or could cause frequent tardiness or absences. Who has an important stake in the outcome of the issue? Of course, our students. The discussion on the table is taking away funding from their music program and athletics and activities. They also may lose their way of getting to school if they cannot afford to add a fee of transportation on their plates. Parents are another important stakeholder. It may put an additional financial burden on their families, or they may need to shift their schedules in order to get their children educated. Teachers, they're at risk of losing possibly a 5% increase that's already been promised due to the cost of living. And for the music teacher or teachers, it could mean possibly losing a job or reducing a contract. And then transportation, it may reduce workforce or increase the workload of others. Who are the relevant stakeholders? The first relevant stakeholders in any educational situation are, of course, our students. There are other relevant stakeholders, though, such as the parents, the Board of Ed, the superintendent, those district office staff, such as the financial director, teachers, transportation, coaches, even the community members. What else do I need to know? I need to know how significant the budget cut from the state is, but I also need to know if it's a temporary cut or if it's long term, and what is the state planning to do to bring that funding back up or to re-increase that with time? And am I ready to make a decision? I know enough that I could make a decision, but I will not fully understand the impact of a decision since I don't know all of the information that would be needed to understand the full impact that would come from multiple different angles in a situation such as this. So here's some different options that we could take. So if I were to take no action at all, there are some consequences in that. That could impact more than just the district. If I did not cut anything and I kept the 5% increase, I would need to ensure that I'm being responsible with the budget and taxpayer dollars. And ultimately, we would probably go negative. We would go into the red, so to say. I could also take the approach of doing nothing as leaving the 5% increase, but moving forward with the cuts to music, athletics, and paying a fee for transportation. Some of the potential consequences there is that we could have a lawsuit against the district since there are statutes surrounding district transportation and who you can and cannot fee for that. So if I were to go on the complete opposite end and come up with an outlandish idea and take extensive action, I could try to make everybody happy and give them all what they want, and maybe I'll start a campaign for a bond. And this bond could include updates to the transportation facility. Maybe we could buy some solar panels to energize our facility and to help recharge some newly purchased hybrid buses. This bond would help spread the cost out to all members of the community and not just the parents. And with a community that is so supportive of the school district, it is possible that it would pass. So, looking more at our intermediate strategies, which are more likely strategies to put on the table and truly discuss with the committee and the board. Of course, we could reach out to legislation, ask about the specifics of the cuts. Do they anticipate any relief or changes? We could help advocate for a change and discuss with them what the impacts of things like this look like on a rural community. We could have students within a 2-mile radius transport themselves. This would allow us to still be in compliance with Statute 726487, which actually indicates a 2.5-mile radius. This would reduce the amount of routes needed to be ran, which in turn would reduce maintenance and fuel costs, as well as the possible reduction of staff to compensate. We could look at if there's any grants available to support other areas of our budget. There's often grants available through the federal government for areas of high need or for safety and security of schools. That's always an option. We could combine routes and bus stops. If possible, we could combine those to allow for fewer stops as well as set bus stops for groups of students instead of picking them up at their driveway. The district does hold the power to do this, and this is outlined in Statute 726488. We could freeze our administrative salaries for a year. So instead of having administration take the percentage of increase in salary as determined by negotiations, administration could choose to freeze their salaries for a year to help reduce costs. Those are oftentimes some of the largest salaries in the district, so that could help. We could consider the pay difference between using district transportation versus paying mileage to parents for bringing their own students. So mileage has a limit that's set by the state. The cost that you would pay to parents has the limit that's set by the state, but districts can choose to pay the mileage districts can choose the mileage rate to pay without surpassing that set limit by the state. You also only have to pay mileage for one student, or rather one vehicle per se, even if there's more than one student in the vehicle. This is also stated in statute 726489. So the upfront cost of this may appear cheaper on paper, but I would worry about the logistics of how we would keep track of who needs to pay and who needs to be paid, and ensure that no one is falsifying this in order to receive any type of income. We could reduce the transportation fee for those that are eligible to pay the fee, make it smaller than what was maybe originally decided. We could start over with teacher negotiations. Perhaps the teachers could come to an agreement and ratify an amount that is less than that 5% that was decided upon. We could create and move to a stagger start schedule and have the middle and high school start early and then the two elementary schools start later. That would take a smaller fleet of buses, and it would also reduce the amount of staff needed to drive the buses. We could add additional stakeholders to the committee. Are there additional parents that need to be involved? How about members of transportation? Maybe other people that these cuts may impact. Hmm. So after this, we can evaluate all those options. I've kind of already spoken through all of those, but here's a nice way of just outlining all of those different options that we just considered and talked through. What are some of the pros of those, and what are some of the cons of those as well? These are definitely important things to keep in mind, as well as state statutes when you're ultimately trying to come to making a decision. So the decision. After consulting with the stakeholders that have been mentioned in our previous slides, as well as weighing all of the different options, I believe the best decision would be to choose multiple options from the ones discussed. So here are the options that I would move forward with. The changes that will impact the most stakeholders are staggered start times, combining routes and bus stops, and the reduction of funds for after-school athletics and activities. The first thing to do to ensure implementation is to communicate, of course, to parents and give them ample time to plan for the changes. So let's talk about the implementation of these decisions. So first, I would reach out to legislation in order to try and get some answers and find out what the plan is moving forward. Second, I would add additional stakeholders to that committee that aids in developing those options to consider that we would bring to our board. Then I would bring those suggested changes to the board for approval as appropriate. Fourth, I would notify our administrators that we intend to freeze our salaries for 1 year, notating that this it would impact myself as the superintendent as well. Fifth, I will work with our building administrators on implementing new schedules due to staggered start times. Sixth, I'll work with transportation on combining routes and creating combined bus stops. Seventh, then I will continue to work with transportation on the timing of routes and secure those pickup times. Eighth, I'll look at our staffing needs based on all of these changes and take appropriate action where needed. Next, I'll communicate to families of the new schedules due to staggered times, as well as their new bus routes, stops, and pickup times. Then I may look into some grant options and apply as appropriate. And finally, I will continuously evaluate these changes and accumulate data in order to appropriately adjust as needed. Some outcomes of the decision may be that the district administrators are unhappy with having their salaries frozen for a year. However, I would ensure that I would hold true to only doing this for a year, but there's always the chance that this will upset someone enough that they leave their position. Another consequence is that we may lose valuable staff members due to the stagger start and combined bus routes. I do believe that if the consequences to face are those of staff being upset or maybe leaving the district, then I would be able to deal with those on my own as the superintendent. So here are my references that I use to help aid me in this case study. And at that concludes our case study, and I appreciate you all for listening and tuning in.